A big college football showdown in Waco, Texas this week. A huge Big 12 matchup with possible playoff implications. Of course, we're talking about Oklahoma State and Baylor. Two great offensive teams, of course, and two teams that defensively I think would surprise you, especially coming from Big 12 teams. But the Big 12 in general this year, I think is going to be super competitive. A lot of the top tier teams look pretty evened out. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the Big 12 shakes out this year. But Drew, kicking it to you. Like I just mentioned, offensively, these are two powerhouses. We'll start with Oklahoma State. What are the main keys for this Oklahoma State offense that you've noticed?
Yeah, Oklahoma State, I like their quarterback. They do a really good job of throwing the ball. They're 28th in the country in passing offense, and they're 21st in yards per play. So, I mean, they do have an offense that gets down the field. One thing I would take into consideration, though, is I don't really think Oklahoma State has had a true test yet. If you wanted to look at their schedule, they played Central Michigan, Arizona State, and Arkansas Pine Bluff. Three teams, which obviously Arizona State being the best of those three, but still not a great team. Oklahoma State struggled in that first game against Central Michigan defensively, but the offense looked really good in that game, and it looked really well against Arkansas Pine Bluff. And I think that's just going to have to be the key, obviously. I mean, you got to win games with scoring points, right? And Baylor has a really good defense. Now, Baylor's offense has been improving as the season's gone along. Their quarterback has looked okay at the beginning of the season. I think he really took a big step forward in the Iowa State game. He threw for about 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and was very key in getting that win there. And then, you guys kind of hear me talking about the comparison and schedules. Well, I just think that's going to play a big part in this game. One, because Baylor's been tested. They've had a couple games. They've been on the road at BYU, who's a really good team. And then they played at home against Iowa State, which is a good team. So they've faced adversity as compared to this Oklahoma State team. They haven't really seen much. And not only that, Oklahoma State actually had a bye week this past week. Now, some people might look at it and be like, well, that's a good thing. But sometimes you got to look at it in this way. I don't know how much rust Oklahoma State's going to have coming out of this bye week. I'll be honest, I'm not really sure what Oklahoma State's track history is when it comes to playing games after a bye week. And they also have it very early in the season as well. I think Oklahoma State kind of got a bye week at a bad time. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. I just think Baylor not having a bye week, they're not going to have to shake off as much rust. I don't know how much of a factor that's going to play in this. But I still think Oklahoma State has a lot of question marks on the defensive end. Obviously, we know they gave up 44 points to Central Michigan. Since then, they've played okay, only giving up 17 points to Arizona State and 7 to Arkansas Pine Bluff again. Two teams that really don't have great offenses, and neither does Central Michigan. So, Aiden, with that being said, a question for you. What do you think Oklahoma State's going to have to do defensively to pull out the win here?
Well, Baylor loves to slow the pace down and slow down the speed of the game and, really eat into that clock offensively. So Oklahoma State is going to have to be dominant in the front seven and be able to stop that run game and keep Baylor behind the sticks and behind where they want to be as far as third downs. Last year, this Oklahoma State defense led the Oklahoma State D-line, rather, led the nation in sacks. And this year, I think they're returning all their guys, if not all but one. So this defense is built around the defensive line. Now, as far as the run game, when the running backs do get past that D-line, there is the potential to get gapped. Their linebackers don't always fill the gaps responsibly. And as far as Baylor goes, I saw a PFF stat today that Baylor runs outside zone 70% of the time. And I honestly think that that's helpful for this Oklahoma State defense because if you're going to be trying to reach those D linemen that I just mentioned is the best position group on their team, you're going to have a tough time with that. So I think that's an area where Oklahoma State's defense can have success. Transferring to Baylor's defense, though, it's no secret what they need to do. Of course, we know Oklahoma State loves to use tempo and run as many plays as they can. Number 62 for Baylor, D lineman, he is by far and away their best player. He's going to be playing on Sundays. He is going to have to step up and have a big game, and they're going to have to keep this Oklahoma State offense off the field because if this Oklahoma State offense gets going, they're not going to be able to get stopped. Like, this is one of the best offenses in college football. I'm a Tennessee fan, so I talk about Heupel when I mention pace and tempo. But what Coach Gundy's been able to do at Oklahoma State is nothing short of remarkable. And I love watching this offense go, and I'm expecting them to have a big game this Saturday.
Yeah, and Baylor, when you look at them statistically on the offensive end, they're not going to really strike you as elite. But here's what I'll say to that. I mean, they're still averaging 40.5 points per game. That's 22nd in the country in scoring offense. Pretty solid. And you got to take into account again to the teams they played. They played a BYU team that's really good, an Iowa State team that's really good. I know the stats might not look jaw-dropping, but they rush for about 5 yards per carry, which is really impressive. They're just a very efficient offense. They're a team that doesn't really turn the ball over and make a lot of mistakes. which is very, very crucial. Obviously, in football, I mean, you see a lot of these games, and when you see two teams like this evenly matched, usually whoever wins the turnover battle is going to win the game. Now, Oklahoma State is a very up-tempo offense. They like to throw the ball a lot. Obviously, it leads the risk to more turnovers and more interceptions, which I think Baylor's going to have to do. They're going to have to steal some possessions, and I think they can do it. I really do. They're going to be more of a heavy run, I think, in this game. I think they're really going to try to kill some clock and manage the time of possession like they did against Iowa State last week. I want to say they had about 10 minutes of a time of possession advantage, or they had the ball for 10 minutes more than Iowa State did. And I think if Baylor can do that really throughout the course of the season, I think they're going to be a really, really tough team to beat. A pretty talented team, and they play Oklahoma. Obviously, they play Texas. When you look at the four teams that have the best chance of winning the Big 12, you got Oklahoma State and Baylor, Texas, and Oklahoma. This game right here, I think, is going to be a big step forward or a big step back for either one of these teams, whether they win or lose, in terms of confidence. Because this is just the first out of three battles that these teams are going to have. I mean, if you beat Oklahoma State, you still got to beat Oklahoma. You still got to beat Texas. But I think a win, whoever wins this game, is going to be able to look at those games with a little more confidence, rather than going into those games with a loss in their back pocket, knowing that if they lose that game, it could be over. So with that being said, getting a little long-winded here, I guess I'll go ahead and make my prediction. It's at home at Baylor. Baylor has a pretty good home field advantage, I would say. The crowd usually gets into it, especially now that Baylor's been producing wins. Oklahoma State, like I said earlier, it's just hard for me to really gauge how good they are. One, because they struggled with Central Michigan, at least on the defensive end. They've only played Arizona State, which is really their only Power 5, or it is the only Power 5 team they played, and really their only competition of the year. So I just don't know how good they're going to be, especially coming out of bye week. I mean, this is a game where you can't have any rust, especially on the road like this. Baylor's 2.5-point favorites. I think Baylor wins, and I think Baylor covers. I think it might be a field goal game. I think it's going to be pretty low scoring, to be honest. I think Baylor is going to be able to keep Oklahoma State off the field for a majority of the game. I could expect both teams to kind of get in the 20s. I think the key for this game is the first one to 24 is going to win the game.
Wow, so you're taking a low-scoring game. I'm thinking the exact opposite. I like Oklahoma State in a higher-scoring game. Once you mentioned about Baylor's offense, before I get into my prediction, you're 100% right. Their quarterback doesn't take a lot of chances. Their offensive coordinator doesn't take a lot of chances. They're going to use the run to set up the play action and naked bootlegs and, try and get it into the flats. And every now and then they'll max protect and take a shot deep over the defense's heads. But I think as long as Oklahoma State D-line can play to the potential and play to their talent level, I think that they could stop this run game. And I think if they do stop this Baylor run game and you force this Baylor quarterback to make tough throws in obvious passing situations, I think that Oklahoma State could come away with some turnovers. So Baylor's 2.5-point favorites at home, which bookmakers normally they'll give 3 points for the home team just for home field advantage. So that has me thinking that they think that Oklahoma State's going to win this game. So I also believe in Mike Gundy. He's very adamant about special teams. Of course, you could say that about a lot of great head coaches, but he really hammers it home with his guys. So maybe expect a couple big special teams plays from Oklahoma State, but I'm going to take Oklahoma State in a win.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to mention before we wrap it up here, the only reason I say it's really going to be low scoring is I know how powerful Oklahoma State's offense is. I know how efficient Baylor's offense is. But I just have so much faith in Baylor. I think they're going to be able to keep the ball on the ground. Like I said, they average almost 5 yards per carry. And obviously, they're not a one-play touchdown kind of offense. They're time of possession. They control the clock. When you play against an offense like an Oklahoma State that's very high-powered, high-tempoed, even if you aren't getting in the end zone, but you're putting together long drives, it's really hard for that offense to get into a rhythm that's high-powered and high-tempoed. And I just have full confidence I think Baylor's going to do that. It's going to be a big game regardless. I mean, whoever wins this game.
Here, I want to say one more thing. I agree with you. Sorry to cut you off, but I agree with you 100%. And like you mentioned throughout the video, Oklahoma State hasn't been tested this year. That's 100% true. And BYU is a great team that Baylor beat. And like you said, they put up a bunch of points against them. My philosophy or my thinking process is it's hard to string together 11, 12, 13 play drives. I've said this before. And all it takes is one stop if you're not taking chunk plays down the field compared to Oklahoma State where they could be behind on the sticks and take a shot play and score a touchdown. So that's my thinking process behind that. But I definitely agree with you. This Oklahoma State team is not proven. And that's the only reason I might be wavering a little bit on my pick is just because they haven't played a great Power 5 team. But For all the reasons I've said, I really do trust Mike Gundy as a head coach, and I think he can get the job done.
Well, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Let us know down below in the comments of what you guys think of this game, whether you agree or disagree with our picks, and let us know what you think the keys for both Baylor and Oklahoma State, what they need to do in order to pull out this big-time win. Please like, subscribe, share the video if you can. It'd be much appreciated. We do appreciate your guys' support, and we'll see you in the next video.